Hello and welcome to Let's Enter the Arena. I'm your host, VM Campos. This is the podcast where I chat with a different member of the Magic the Gathering community every single episode, and we share our tips, tricks, tragedies, and triumphs as we focus on Magic Arena. Well, everyone, we had a lot of amazing news recently in the world of Magic, and therefore I needed to have an amazing guest on the podcast return to talk all about it. Please welcome back Dragosi.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
How are you doing so far today?
Doing well. Just been taking some time to kind of recoup from the month of Magic beforehand, taking a couple of days off and getting right back into it here pretty soon.
Oh, very nice. So let's catch up people that haven't listened to the episode before, and just a quick origin story. What year or maybe Magic set did you start off with?
I started playing Magic in 2010, so about 10 years ago, and I started with Rise of the Eldrazi. There we go. That's the one. Zendikar. So I started with Rise of the Eldrazi back in, it was still Shards of Alara and original Zendikar block.
Oh, very cool. So you've been around a while. What's your favorite archetype or Magic format or color or anything like that?
Right now, my favorite format overall has to be, I guess if you count Cube, like Vintage Cube, is one of my favorite things. I always play it on Magic Online when it's up. I do videos on it and stuff, which is, I love doing that. I stream it a whole bunch. Constructed format right now, I mean, I also love Vintage. I love Legacy. I love some of the older formats, but since I don't quite have the ability to play those at the moment, playing on Magic Arena Historic has become one of my favorite formats.
Very cool. I've been enjoying Historic a lot myself, actually, too. I just got up to Mythic for the first time, playing a really weird jank mono-white Ulamog deck. And I have the stream to prove it that I got up to actually Mythic with that build.
Very cool.
So thank you for being on the podcast. Would you like to promote anything of your online presence?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at esportsalan. My Twitch is Dragosi MtG. And then I have some more promotion to do a little bit later. A little bit later in the show, I got some cool stuff to talk about.
Ooh, cool. So that'll definitely entice people to listen throughout the whole episode. So, okay, let's do a quick tip for the audience. I know that there's different levels of skill in the audience at the moment. Let's give them a tip.
I think my one thing that I will tell people, that my tip, quote unquote, for people is to not be afraid to, or I should say, we need to do away with the stigmatism of, quote unquote, net deck. Right? Generally, everything is a net deck, regardless of where you find it. Like the internet is a much more commonplace than it used to be back when that phrase was coined. And so the stigmatism behind, or the stigma behind net deck, quote unquote, right? Is relatively like derogatory. It's for people like people say that somebody doesn't have any skill because they just net deck something, they just grabbed it from somebody else. I mean, yeah, that's kind of the point. There are people who, while it is, and also nothing against people who brew, absolutely not. Brew away. I love brews, but generally there are people who are at the top end of Magic. There are people who are very high end competitive players. And their job is to test and to play Magic. And if they come up with a deck that works, and you want to win tournaments and you want to win on ladder games, there's no shame in picking up that deck. There's no shame in playing that deck. Don't if your jam is to go and play the ladder and play with a deck that you came up with an interesting brew, by all means, that's on you. No one's telling you that's you shouldn't do that. But at the same time, don't we need to we need to make it so that people do not feel bad about going and playing a deck that somebody else had put together and had success with, because that's what some people want to just have success in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I've hit Mythic a few times playing decks that other people have made. And so, and there's no shame in that. There's no issue with that. So I think my one tip would be is just don't be afraid to grab a deck from somebody. There's tons of resources out there for deck lists. Don't be afraid to use those resources to help you play in ladder or in tournaments or whatever.
Yeah, I think it bears repeating that the pros do it. I see plenty of pros tweeting out that they're preparing for a new event and they're maybe in a team and each one of them maybe is playing that particular deck. So if the pros are doing it, you can do it. If you're trying to grind dailies, if you're trying to get to the top of the ladder, then yeah, you have these resources that you can reach out to. And it is a perfectly viable strategy. And it also depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to do the competitive stuff, then okay, you better come correct with competitive nature. But if you're trying to do the fun stuff, like, oh, here's just my, mono white cat deck, because here's cats. Don't expect to get to Mythic with that. Because everyone already kind of knows what they're in for. If we're going to climb the ladder, if we're going to get to tournaments, we've got to be on top of our game. And sometimes things do coalesce under a few decks, a few archetypes, but it still comes down to you knowing the deck, piloting the deck, knowing your outs in the deck. So it's not just a copy and paste. You still have to pilot it.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. And I do think that, yeah, so I think that anybody can, I think you absolutely could hit Mythic with, a brew, with cats, with whatever. I think it's possible. It's definitely possible. Anything is possible. But if you want to give yourself the best advantages to doing it, to being successful in the ladder or, what have you, you take it from the pros. Like, they're the ones who have made careers out of this stuff, right? They're making money, and if that's your goal, then you need to, you need to, take a hit and just run with it and just do the net deck thing, grab a list from people who have played and tested and thought about all the intricacies, all the potential tech options, and like they've thought about that stuff, they've tested that stuff, so there's no shame in it.
Yeah, that's a good tip then. Use the tools at your disposal. We've got a bunch of topics to talk about today because there were reveals. Wizards of the Coast did a pretty amazing presentation with Jimmy Wong and Becca Scott, where they were adventurers in the world of Zendikar, I guess, and they were telling us about the brand new Zendikar Rising set. So, general thoughts on the presentation of the new stuff?
So, I mean, I love the amount of effort that Wizards puts into their reveals, like with example, like with Korea doing the comic book art gallery type thing, like all of that is really, really cool. I think that they always do a really great job with that. I also think that the way that they presented some of the cards this time around was also really good. I think it was interesting. They talked about a lot of all the mechanics involved in the set. They also held on to a couple of really cool cards to talk about that were fan favorites. I would expect kind of in the past. So it's very cool to see a lot of that come around.
I liked that they kind of tossed it to different people throughout the presentation. There was Jimmy and Becca kind of going through the adventure aspect of things, and they dialed into different people. I think there was Matt Turian there. There was Maurice. There were just a lot of people that were kind of popping in and out to kind of give their perspective of things.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Matt Tabak, who popped out to show some of the mechanics. He's actually been a previous guest of the podcast a few episodes ago.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very
so
cool.
I thought, I recognize that voice. What did you think about the new mechanics that we got? Well, there were some returning mechanics and new mechanics. What do you think about either one?
So I am a fan of Landfall. I've always been a fan of Landfall. I'm very much excited about that. I'm also really excited about the dual-faced modal cards. So I think those are going to be very exciting as well to play with. The thing that concerns me is the party mechanic. While it's currently, at least with the very limited knowledge that we have, it seems that it's a very strict application and where it can be useful. And it feels kind of, it's like a toned down version of a bunch of other cards that do very similar things. So we'll have to see exactly how it plays out. There is one particular deck that I'm kind of excited to try with the mechanic. It's definitely a unique mechanic and very interesting for sure. So there's one particular deck I'm interested to try out with Party. So we'll see how that ends up working out.
Okay, cool. I think we'll probably delve into maybe a little bit of that deck in just a little bit, but okay, so the modal double-faced cards, it's still fascinating to me that after 27 years, Magic is still, exploring in so many different spaces. The very first double-faced cards, those were back in Innistrad, I believe. Original Innistrad, right?
Yep, original Innistrad were the original double-faced cards, and those were not modal. And for those who don't know exactly what modal means, is that generally a modal spell means that you have a choice to make as you're casting the spell. It's part of the steps to casting a spell is choosing modes. And so, like for example, if you're casting Cryptic Command or you're casting Sublime Epiphany in Standard, as you're casting the spell before it goes on the stack, you pick which of the things on the card that it gives you the choices to pick. You pick them before the spell is cast. So in this particular case, with these double-faced cards, you're picking which side of the card you're casting, actually. Not anything on the card itself, but it's more so which side, which is kind of a cool way and a cool approach to it.
Yeah, exactly. That's the evolution of things in terms of those original double-faced cards. I think there was a trigger, there was a condition to be able to flip it. Like also there was the famous example of the double-faced cards of the Planeswalkers in Magic Origins. Well, here before, you get a choice. So, for example, one of the cards, Branch Loft Pathway. This is the whole cycle of brand new dual lands and a dual land in a new way, in that you get to pick which of the colors you want before you cast it. So, on the one hand, it's a strictly worse dual land because, of course, they hit it out of the park with alpha dual lands. But here you can pick which one you need at the time that you need it. I don't need any more green mana sources, so instead I'll cast the other side of it, which is the Boulder Loft Pathway. So I think that's a pretty interesting way to kind of deal with dual lands.
Yeah, you said that they're strictly worse dual lands. That they're also strictly better basic lands as well. So it's interesting. I think like in this next iteration, I mean, I can't think of a reason, at least right now. Okay, I can think of one reason right now in historic anyways, but in standard I cannot think of a way or a reason that you're not just playing these over basic lands, because they're just strictly better than basic lands in every way. I guess maybe they're not searchable by, or are they even searchable? Or
no, they just say lands. They just say
okay, so they don't have the basic land subtype, I guess, right? So you can't search it with what? Field of Ruin. You also can't search it with Fabled Passage. I guess maybe that's maybe reason enough, I suppose, to play a few basics here and there. But like in historic, you have Settle the Wreckage as well. But I definitely expect that these will. I'm gonna hedge that these are going to probably take up and eat into the real estate that, I mean, the very little real estate that the Scrylands already kind of occupy. Because I think that these are just kind of a little, at least in some decks, anyways. That these are just kind of a little bit better than the Scrylands, I think.
Yeah, they don't come in tapped, so they're ready to use as soon as you need them. You do commit to a certain color at a certain time. You don't get the scry, and then though I often hear people saying how scry can be very valuable at most times of the game. But yeah, that coming in tapped, those Scrylands coming in tapped, that's often a detriment. What do you think about the design that they have, like a little extra piece of graphic design on the bottom left corner where it says land, land on the other side?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good. It's good, kind of a good indication. I think that it's because they always have some kind of indicator of what's on the other side of the card. So, for example, with like Huntmaster of the Fells from the original Innistrad, they had I believe they had the power and toughness of the other side of the card on the bottom right, or kind of like right above the power and toughness box. They had that power, but then they don't say kind of what the card is. So they always have kind of something like that. So I think that that's good that it shows kind of what's on the other side. It's a very clean way, instead of like saying what the name is, it just makes it much easier to understand. Okay, yeah, this is a dual land. The other side is this color, so I know my choices are a lot easier, and you're not having to do a lot of dexterity type things, because if they put the name on there, you'd have to if you didn't remember what that specific land was called, you'd have to like pull it out of your sleeve and look at it, and it just is a whole mess. So it's good that they just put the mana symbol, they say it's a land, very, very clean, very easy. I like it a lot.
You might reveal too much information to the opponent if it also had a little bit too much information there. And a land is simple enough that it says, okay, what's on the other side is a land, and it'll give you white mana. So I think that's a good amount of information. I have a degree in graphic design, and however this is rubbing me the wrong way, I kind of feel like it's kind of tacked on to it, even though it's clean enough, it's simple enough, it tells you what's there. I just kind of feel like it's getting slightly cluttered because we have also the extra icon on the top left. And I kind of cannot tell just yet, I'm not used to it, the two sides of the icon on the top left, where you have sort of like a teardrop pointing to the left if it's the front side, and a little triangle upwards, which I think is a mountain, I guess. And then on the other side of it, we have two types of triangles, I guess. So I kind of think the iconography could be designed a little better. Like, I know we've got the double face cards, let's say in Magic Origins, where there is that icon that is a little bit more emblematic, and here I guess these are little mountains or arrows, or what do you think?
Yeah, I was looking at that too, and the only thing I can think of as far as why, or kind of like what these symbols mean, is like the one triangle is side one and the two triangles is side two. That's the only thing I can think of. I'm not entirely sure why that specific design choice was made there, but yeah, I mean, I can definitely agree with the kind of the clutter. The bottom left is a weird place. Traditionally, a lot of like information is put in the bottom right hand side of things. So I feel like, the bottom left is a little bit of an interesting place. It's a weird place. And the fact that also like I guess I agree also that the like where it has like tap add white mana is a little close to the middle where the stamp is, and it does feel a little bit cluttered. I think that if you put it on the other side, it might look a little better.
Yeah, like when we were talking about the power and toughness being on the bottom right in an Innistrad card, well, we're kind of used to stuff being there, and here now it's on the left side, but I guess it's different information here. It's a little bit more information, so I guess they thought, well, we'll get people used to it on the left side.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the backside of it has that sort of like alternate promo style of border. It's not like if we look at the backside of Branch Loft Pathway, if we look at the white side of it, the Boulder Loft Pathway, that white border is different than the classic white border, or classic, the 2015 style of border. Yeah. It's like that alternate promo style that I've seen once in a while here, or is it like the future shifted style? It's just slightly different. I like it. I like that it's kind of different, that it's not the regular color, it's like the backside color.
Yeah, I think it's nice kind of just having the slight differentiation. It is a little... I find it interesting though that, at least from what I can see, I don't at least with the site that I'm looking at doesn't have all 10 on. Oh well, I guess would it ever be exactly 10? Because I'm looking on here, there's 5, 6. What am I missing here?
That's the thing, that it wasn't the full pair of things. That's one of Mark Rosewater's hints, that we're going to do 6 of these lands, and even though there could be the full 10 or 20 or whatever it was, they only put the first 6 because of the limited number of slots. So we are getting a little bit of dissonance in that it's not every single pair. Yeah,
I was going to say, because I also find it interesting that the 6 that they chose, they doubled up on red and blue as the face cards, and not the other way around, not using black on the face of at least one of those two. So that's kind of interesting.
I guess that's just the usual, that they just have so much stuff that they could do in a Magic set, but then limited amount of space for it, and they stretch it out for a time. Like again, with like Planeswalkers, they from what I understand, they had already planned for there to be 4 loyalty abilities on Planeswalkers, but they didn't do that until Jace the Mind Sculptor. So they're saving stuff for the future, I guess. From my point of view, it sounds like a gripe fest. No, these are amazing cards, but I'm just griping about the visuals. I think it's really weird that the colors that they chose to represent, for example, if you look at the white, the bottom left corner of the Branch Loft Pathway says land white. That background color is so extremely similar to the land add black of Bright Climb Pathway. But then it is extremely obvious in the Crag Crown Pathway that it's green on the other side. And then I just think that the indicator of what's white and the indicator of what's black is so similar. The green one is very obvious, too obvious, and then the red one is more like pink than red. Am I nitpicking way too much? Should I just play Magic and shut up?
It's really weird shades.
Yeah.
I would have probably preferred. I mean, I don't think that there's a uniform color per se that will allow you to have it be exactly what you want, or like to be able to like show all of the colors in the text correctly. But yeah, it's really weird.
Maybe if they just had it on, well, maybe they're trying to convey too much info. They're trying to convey that, okay, you've got a land, tap it to give the mana and the color behind it, just because lands themselves have a color to the card, even though they're a colorless card. And I guess they're trying to show too much info. I would have just loved it if it was just a simple white to contrast with whatever the rest of the face of the card is, and it just said land, tap to add red, without an extra background to that.
Yeah. I mean, like, for what it's worth, like I think like the River Glide Pathway, like the red on that looks very good. I think that looks really good, and then the Crag Crown Pathway, the green on that looks really good. But the blue on the other side of River Glide Pathway is kind of like this really light, almost non-existent kind of blue. It's like way too light. So yeah, it's a very odd color palette.
But all of that graphic design aside, I think these cards are going to be great. I think these cards are going to be sought after and definitely used in Standard and probably a bunch of other formats, right?
Oh yeah, I imagine. I mean, for these are basic lands that are different names. So for any format where you're playing Field of the Dead, like this is absolutely what you want. These are going to be obviously staples in Commander. I expect, because again, they just kind of occupy a different land space, and for anybody who's, in my opinion, anyways, anybody playing more than even monocolor, frankly, could probably do it. But anybody playing more than 2 colors should probably also just include Field of the Dead in their deck, because just the versatility that you get of just different lands, you will get there on Field of the Dead far more often than it will be a burden to you. So just having some of these additional cards in here to kind of help you contribute towards your unique land count for 7, I think is worth it. So
yeah. Well, one more thought here on the double-faced. Not only do we get lands that can either be of one color or another, we get some uncommon lands that come into play tapped, and if you don't need a tapped land, instead it might be a creature or sorcery or an instant. So the one I'm looking at is Akum Warrior. On the one hand, it is either a 6 mana 4/5 with trample, or if you don't quite have enough mana for it, you can play it as the Akum Teeth, which is a land that comes into play tapped, and it gives you 1 red mana. So again, they're kind of exploring this new space, modal double-face cards, and they're showing some possibilities in one, either land on one side, land on the other, or land on one side and something else on the other.
Yeah, I think this is also really great design. I think this is something, it solves a lot of the issues. It solves some issues that Magic has had in, like, the mana screw, mana flood type thing. The only thing that will, is the only thing that really is going to matter here is just how good the spells are on them. Well, that'll just determine how big of a success or failure these modal double face cards are. The one that they showed on the preview stream, which was Valakut's Awakening, a 2 and a red for an instant, put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many +1. I mean, I think that's a very reasonable card to have. You're probably going to be playing this honestly in red when you start to flood out in like the mid game. Having one of these things to go, to just shuffle away or to tuck all of your, maybe your mediocre 1-drop and your land and draw 3 for 3 mana seems really good to me. So like if a bunch of the other spells are on par with Valakut's Awakening as far as like power level or usefulness, then this will be a success of a mechanic. I think it's a good idea. They just need to deliver on the quality of the spells.
Yeah, I like that mechanic in red. Does it have a name or a nickname? Because I know we've got, for example, Impulse Draw as one of red's mechanics, where draw some cards, but if you don't use them in time, they're gone. Does this have a mechanic? Because we often name these based on the first version of the card, like if you mill something, it came from millstone and so forth.
Right. Yeah. I don't think so, as far as I know, because like what rummage is draw one, discard one as an example, or loot is draw two, discard two, or something. Right. Like so, like, I don't think that there's a particular name for this yet. It was on a Chandra Planeswalker at one point. I think it was either it wasn't Torch of Defiance. It was Chandra. It was the one from Battle for Zendikar. Yeah, it was on. It was Chandra Flamecaller 0. Discard all cards in your hand, then draw that many +1. So I don't know what you'd call that, but that's where it came from. I don't know if we could figure out an interesting name for that.
Yeah. Okay, well, double face cards are back with a brand new mode, with a brand new concept to them. Cool. Any final thoughts on that before we cover a couple more things?
I think it's a very interesting mechanic to bring into this set, and the way they're going about it is great. I think that they did a very good job with the design on this.
Okay, then let's delve a little bit deeper into Party. Well, this seems to tie into another concept and another synergy that they're doing with D&D. After all, Dungeons & Dragons and Magic are all part of the same company at the moment. And now we have Party, which does require a certain condition, and the more of that condition you meet, the better result you have.
So Party requires that you control a creature that is a wizard, a rogue, a warrior, and a cleric. It's up to one of each. So in all reality, the most you could benefit from any given party spell is 4 of whatever it is. So for example, the was Acquisitions Expert, which is kind of like a Kitesail freebooter. It enters the battlefield and your opponent reveals cards equal to the number of creatures in your party. And then you get to pick one and discard it. So while there's some upside of it being you get to discard any card that they reveal, you have to be able to get you could get anywhere between, you'll get at least one, you'll always have at least one, but you may get up 1, 2, 3, or 4, but you never get more than 4 because it's up to one of each of those creature types.
Yeah, I think the nuance of these things, especially for beginner players, because they might think, oh, I have 3 rogues at the moment, so I'm going to be able to do it 3 times. But no, it is going to be up to one of each of these, and only these. That's what a party is defined at the moment. I suppose there could be like more room for growing this space in the future, like that this cares about a certain number of things. But I think it's kind of elegant that we use the word party, and it's the classic type of party of the cleric, rogue, warrior, wizard. And like you said, it's guaranteed at least one, which is probably the card that you're playing, and the more of the party that you have, the more that you get. And that did stand out for me in the Acquisition Expert, that it could include lands. It didn't say the usual non-land card.
Yeah, I mean, and that's usually those like unconditional draw or discards. Any unconditional interaction effect is usually very, very powerful. Counterspell, being able to counter anything. This, for an example, being able to discard anything. Any particular piece of removal, that like Vindicate, that can destroy anything. So like those are generally always going to be very good. So I do expect that like something like Acquisitions Expert might see some amount of play. It depends. It depends on where. And this is actually the deck that I thought about immediately upon seeing this mechanic was Winota. So Winota, there are a lot of you're probably going to be using like the wizards and the clerics to trigger Winota's ability in combat to then get your human rogues and warriors into play to then trigger your bigger party effects. So I think that that's a kind of a natural home, but the only problem is going to be kind of figuring out what the colors are going to be. because there I could see a world where it's Jeskai. I could see a world where it's Naya. I could see a world where it's Mardu, 4-color, 5. It could be anything, honestly. There's a lot of cards that are coming in this set that are fitting into those archetypes because it's one of the main themes of the set, right? So
yeah. They're so far what we've got revealed as of this recording. We've got some interesting party types of cards that kind of run the gamut. Like if we look over at Spoils of Adventure, so 6 mana in total. This is 1 white, 1 blue, plus 4 more. Instant. This spell costs 1 generic mana less to cast for each creature in your party. So this could be decreased all the way down to simply 2. 1 white and 1 blue, and what you get out of that is you gain 3 life and draw 3 cards. So some card draw and life gain in Azorius, and even cheaper if you've got the party going on.
Right, exactly. I mean, and that's something where, you know, in a Winota deck, kind of one of the things that's really hard for that deck to live with is that fact that it just doesn't have very good draw. And so, like, doing something with party where, you know, you have some of these creatures you want to be playing anyways to help you trigger your Winota, and then also you're getting some benefit of being able to reduce this draw spell, gain a little bit of life out of it. I think it's pretty good. Pretty interesting synergy.
I like the art on that a lot. It's like it's literally all of the members of the party, and they're all kind of having fun together and laughing, and they're enjoying the spoils of adventure.
Yeah, this is a really good one. The one actually that I think one of my favorite arts that's been kind of spoiled thus far in this is actually the Linvala. Linvala Shield of the Sea, or Shield of the Sea Gate. Really, really cool looking art. But Linvala's kind of fits in this like deck that almost like this Death and Taxes kind of style deck, or in like a Flyers deck as well. So like one white blue for a 3/3 flyer. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you have a full party, you can choose target non-land permanent an opponent controls until your next turn. It cannot attack, block, or if it has activated abilities, they can't activate them. And then you can sacrifice Linvala to give your creatures hexproof or indestructible. Yeah. So this is definitely one of those. This is a card that I feel very, very cleanly fits into like that Winota style deck where being able to give your creatures hexproof or indestructible is a very relevant ability. And then also you might be able to, if you maybe either get a second attack in, or you just happen to have a bunch of, a full party in play. By the time it goes off, you get to, set up a clean block for yourself, so you don't have to worry about your opponent blocking things you don't want them to. I think this is a card that fits like very, very cleanly in Winota.
I think what's also very powerful, Linvala, is that second that activated ability has no tap and has no mana cost, so you're able to use that right away.
Yeah, I mean that's super, super powerful. Yeah, definitely.
It's kind of got really cool flavor to it also, in that she sacrifices herself for the greater good. That I think that is a very white bit of flavor in there. I think it's a little less Azorius, perhaps, but I like that. And the art is really fun in terms of there's like a little seagull up there cawing as well and flying with Linvala.
Yeah, definitely. I also like that they have like Linvala has always had really cool art.
I'm not fully familiar with the character, although the name sounded familiar. Where else has the character come out on?
So Linvala was a card that Linvala, Keeper of Secrets, Linvala, Keeper of Silence, I'm sorry. She is a card that was in the original Zendikar, and for her, Linvala, Keeper of Silence is a 4-mana, 3/4 flyer. Activated abilities of creatures your opponents control can't be activated, since that was put into Jumpstart. So that's on Arena. The other Linvala the Preserver, was a Linvala that was in Oath of the Gatewatch. It was a 6-mana, 5/5 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, if an opponent has more life than you gain 5. And when it enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more creatures than you make a 3/3 white angel creature token with flying. So it was kind of like a timely reinforcements stapled to a 5/5 flyer. Was definitely played back in its day in Standard. But yeah, I think those are the only places where Linvala has come up. Those are the 3 places.
Oh, okay. That's why I kind of had it on my mind because if it was in Jumpstart, I'm sure I have seen it then. So
Yeah.
her abilities overall of being kind of very, locking down the opponent, they seem to be consistent. And it's interesting though, from what you said, it was a 3/3 angel. Aren't angels always 4/4s?
Yeah, usually they're 4/4s, yeah, but this one was a 3/3.
She hadn't fully earned her wings.
Yeah, I guess not.
So we'll see what more party cards that we get, and though we're already seeing a little bit of variation in the two we just talked about in terms of Spoils of Adventure and Linvala Shield of Seagate, where Spoils and Acquisitions Expert both mentioned creatures in your party, and then Linvala mentions slightly different terminology if you have a full party. So even though it's the term party, they're using it full party versus the other spells. So what do you think about the complexity that we've been seeing in Magic in general? Like, for example, Ikoria was one of the most complex sets that has been out recently.
I like it personally just because for me, um and this might be a little bit selfish, but for me as a player who's played for 10 years, and who also like does game design and who um who casts stuff and makes content around stuff like I love seeing something that I love that has been around for so long still have new iterations and new takes on it that um that just really kind of just bring a different level of strategy to the game. I love strategy as a whole, and like having these complex these some of these complex mechanics lend itself to having deeper strategy. Like I played StarCraft for so long for a long time, so like that's one of the things that I like, just having just a lot going on. Something very complex, very nuanced to really make it work correctly.
I
Yeah, I love
think
it.
I think they walk the tightrope pretty well in terms of there's a little bit for everyone. There are the plain old 2/2s for two, and then you've got the 2/2, but then it's also part of a party, so the full range of complexity for us more entrenched players, and then there's the little bit more basic stuff for the newer players. So kudos to them for trying to balance all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is very. It's definitely something that you have to keep in mind when you're designing a set or a game. Is that, man, it does take it takes a lot to balance a game correctly, and not just in terms of the cards in and of themselves, but like balancing the cards in a way that your audience can be able to pick it up and play with it with very little either upkeep or knowledge. It's one of the reasons why Magic has been so successful.
Yeah. One of the reasons for the success is not only do they invent new things, but they go back to fan favorites and such. So let's look at a couple of things that are returning in Zendikar Rising. We've got Kicker. Any general thoughts on Kicker or new Kicker things we've seen here in the new set?
Yeah, I mean, Kicker's great. It's a mechanic where I enjoy it as a mechanic. It's not one of my favorites. I guess I'm fairly neutral on it. It's not a mechanic that blows me away every time, but I like it. But I think I was hoping that we would see like multi-kicker in some of these, but which I kind of like. I think I kind of like multi-kicker a little bit more. Um, there's a little bit more nuance that can come with that, but I think the kicker, it's fine. I mean, there's some pretty cool cards with kicker in the set.
Well, I guess the uniqueness of Kicker this time, at the very least, that we've seen so far is now we've got Kicker on a Planeswalker, so we can get Jace out. We can get Jace Mirror Mage out for 3 mana, or if we kick him for 5, we get a double dose of Jace.
Yeah, which is definitely very cool. Traditionally, Kicker was on creatures or instants or sorceries, but yeah, never really on a Planeswalker. And I think that this is a really good way to implement it. Yeah, I definitely think that they nailed it with this card. I think the design is really cool.
Yeah, so I was reading people's commentary about you want to kick Jace Mirror Mage usually because then you can use the token copy that you made to do the +1 scry 2, and then once you set up what you like there, then you do the 0 from your main Jace, your big Jace, and you've got synergy there to really control what's coming next in your draws for the price of 5 in that Planeswalker, and that it also kind of broke out of the mold that Planeswalkers kind of fall into a little too easily of +1, draw a card, -2, destroy a thing, minus whatever, win the game.
Right, yeah, I mean, it did feel like that was kind of the templating for a while, and it's really, like, again, with a lot of the cards and a lot of the mechanics and themes in the set, it's very cool to see them break out of the mold and break out of the shell of kind of what has been the status quo for a long time, and just really put some interesting spins on some of these cards. And also one thing that they did with Jace Mirror Mage is that they made a card that is, for one, he's hard to evaluate kind of at face value, but expect that he's going to be strong, but he's not going to be ridiculous. Like, they brought the power level back a bit. They scaled it back to where things feel a little bit more reasonable to be able to play against. I mean, at 3 mana, he's going to come down early, and a lot of people are still a little bit worried about 3 mana costed Planeswalkers from 3 Fairy. But the fact that he doesn't really do a whole ton that's super detrimental to your opponent, as far as like interaction goes, it's definitely a nice welcome thing. And the other thing, I guess, with also this to think about is that, if you kick Jace Mirror Mage, you also need to be ready for removal to come and hit the non-mirrored, non-token Jace, because it is still sorcery speed, right? So still have to think about that. So it's balanced in that way.
We'll see how well this Planeswalker does with this new paradigm. We have so far revealed Nahiri, Heir of the Ancients. So she is a 4 mana in Boros colors, and we get 4 loyalty +1. You create a creature, so you have a little bit of defense for your Planeswalker, where Jace doesn't really have any defense. You've got to defend them other ways. So you get a core, and you also get to attach an equipment, and it looks like we're starting to see more equipment being added to Zendikar, because a lot of stuff is going to rotate out when we come into Zendikar Rising, and I guess one of the big equipments is going to be Embercleave. So do you think equipment is going to start to play more of a role in the next future standard?
So the only way, or one of the ways that I first see equipment being really, really solid is if we have something akin to like a Pure Steel Paladin or a SRAM, I forget what the full name of the card is, but SRAM, where either it's like reducing the amount of equip cost on equipment, or letting you draw cards. When you cast equipment spells, because the problem is that equipment has is that if you're playing a bunch of equipment in your deck, I'm going to say this is from a competitive deck building standpoint. If you're playing a bunch of equipment in your deck, those are not threats and those are not removal, right? They're not ways that you're specifically inherently winning the game. Them by themselves don't do anything. Embercleave is one of the exceptions, because generally it's the only equipment that you're playing in the deck, and it's incredibly powerful. So even if it sits on the battlefield, and you're generally also playing in a deck with hasters, and so you can just get it back online very quickly. So and then I guess also too as well, the equipment needs to also be good. So there's a lot of things kind of going around with this. I think that is going to be a very interesting casual archetype for sure. But unless they print some like busted equipment, like for example, if they were to put Batterskull in the set for some reason, and even then, I don't think that, even if they put Batterskull in the set, I don't think it's going to be quite enough to make it as good. And usually, like, the artifact or the equipment decks that we see are like ones in Modern, where you have SRAM and you have Pure Steel Paladin, and you have a bunch of 0 cost or low 1 mana cost, 0 equip cost artifacts or equipment, so that you can essentially just they're effectively free cantrips where you are casting Paradise Mantle and drawing a card from Saram and Pure Steel Paladin, and then you get to equip it for free onto something, and you use it for mana to cast your next one, right? So like those decks kind of have a lot of synergy going for itself, but that's because the equipment that is in the deck is cheap, and it's cheap equip cost, and it can go off by continually fueling with things like Saram and Pure Steel Paladin, right? So that's what we need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's more of a casual sort of thing, although it's kind of fun when you equip, when you finally equip the Colossus Hammer onto that 1/1 lifelink can't.
Yeah, is Colossus Hammer, wasn't that in a standard set at one point, right?
Yeah, it came out maybe in like core 20 or something. I think it was in one of the core sets, so
yeah, that might be something interesting to look at for historic, actually. Yeah, that's entirely possible. That could be pretty cool.
Yeah, this is going to open up a whole range of new possibilities in historic. We get Zendikar Rising to do a lot of rotation in standard, but we still have historic, so I'm glad that we do have that other mode, that sort of arena eternal sort of mode in historic, where we can still play with the old stuff and with the new stuff, such as the return of Landfall. So Ruin Crab is one. That's pretty straightforward. You have a single blue mana for a crab. It's a 0/3, and then Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent mills 3 cards. So isn't this a callback to that one, maybe like Hedron Crab or something? Wasn't there one that did something like that too?
Yep, Hedron Crab was I forget the stat line of it, but effectively it was a 1 mana 0 whatever that when a landfall, your opponent mills 4. Or I think it might have been, it was target player. It's target player mills 4, not each opponent. So there's a little bit of a different thing. Because Hedron Crab is used in Dredge in Modern sometimes, so that you could mill your stuff into the graveyard so you could dredge. This one only is meant to mill your opponent, which there was a mill theme in Jumpstart, and then there was some cards that are generally pretty good, like Drowned Secrets, and there was kind of like this weird blue white mill deck floating around for a little while. And then you also have like Teferi's Tutelage and things like that. So I think that there is with this crab. I mean, that's kind of the one thing you need, was like this little body to kind of block a little bit some in the early game, and also it rewards you for playing lands. So I think that this is going to be definitely a contender to put mill a little bit more back into favor. It'll be interesting to see how good it's going to be. I'm definitely going to try it out, considering that it's not too terribly. I think it was an uncommon or a common.
Yeah, uncommon.
So it should be. Yeah, so like it's pretty easy, cheap to make. So yeah, definitely interested in trying that out.
I do definitely see the ebb and flow of the mill decks. I do remember the Drowned in Secrets and all of that, and they did add what was his name? Not Budaclad. Bruvac, yeah. The Vendiloquist, or some really interesting name. So I do see the ebb and flow of mill, and that one kind of also seems like a bit of a casual sort of deck, which of course there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that you are not, unless you've got like turbo mill going on and such, you're not quite affecting the opponent while they're running over you while you're trying to mill them out.
Yeah, the one mill deck that has been, I think traditionally has been very good has been Modern Mill, but that's only because you get things like Mind Funeral and Glimpse the Unthinkable, where those are milling more than 4 cards a turn, or even per spell. Like Glimpse is milling 10 cards. Like that's a lot. So those have generally been always good. And the reason why, another thing too that they have as well that makes it very hard for the opponents to win, is that they have a card called Crypt Incursion, which is I think you can exile any number of target creatures from from graveyards or your graveyard. I think it might be from graveyards. And then you gain 3 life for each creature exiled that way. So you would mill over 40 cards out of your deck, or out of your opponent's deck, and then you'd Crypt Incursion and you'd go up to like 60 life, and your opponent couldn't kill you before they decked out, right? So us for historic, and even for historic mostly, I'm gonna say it's you're having to win strictly off the mill plan, Yeah, we're really having to win strictly off the mill plan. So it'll be interesting, like I said, to see. But I think having this more consistent source of mill that just kind of rewards you for making your land drops, I think is going to be a nice boost to it for sure.
So it seems that we got Landfall in every one of the Zendikar sets, and one favorite of all of that was Lotus Cobra. So Lotus Cobra is back. Thoughts?
Oh man, I am so excited for this. I am so excited. I have been playing ramp decks pretty much like over the last like 3 to 4 months. It's just been pretty much exclusively climbing on ladder with ramp and some form of ramp. And having Lotus Cobra back in the format is going to be super exciting. It's going to keep that power level of the ramp decks up quite a bit with things. We still have Uro in the format. Like we have Uro in the format. We have the new Golgari Nissa that's coming that cares about lands and whatnot, right? Like there's it gets loyalty when lands enter the battlefield. Like that's insane. It's insane. Sultai Ramp is already a strong a really strong, if not the top deck in standard right now. It's going to get out of hand. And I'm going to call it, I mean, a lot of people have already been calling it that Uro is getting the axe. Very quickly.
That is such a powerful card. You get, eventually when you cast it, you get a 6/6, sure. But in the beginning, you get that ramp, you get that life, and then every time it attacks, you get more of the same. And you can easily ramp into it in Simic and all of that. So it does feel like these colors are a little bit over the top now. You were playing with original Lotus Cobra when it first came out?
Yep, I played with original Lotus Cobra. It was back, so it came out in the original Zendikar, and it's been about, oh boy, it's probably been about 9 years since I've played this deck. But there was a deck back in the day called Valakut, which Valakut the Molten Pinnacle was a land in original Zendikar, where if it was in play and you controlled 5 or more mountains, whenever a mountain entered play, you got to lightning bolt something. So the point of the deck was just to play a lot of ramp and try to ramp into Primeval Titan as fast as you could, so that you could get your Valakut going, you could get all of your mountains out of your deck when you attacked with it, and then you just lightning bolt your opponent to death. Multiple times. And it wasn't a legendary land either, so you could have multiple Valakuts in play, and you could, if you had all 4 in play, every mountain was a 12-point life swing. Which was huge. So we played Lotus Cobra, I think, in the earlier iterations of the deck to to help us get into Kaldheim Expedition, into Primeval Titan, and just to help us get there just a little bit quicker.
It definitely lives up to its namesake. Whenever you put Lotus on just about any card, it's always kind of harken back to Black Lotus, and it's going to be crazy and full of mana. So this little 2/1 snake with the power of Landfall is just going to be ramping you even faster than ever. Yeah,
and I even expect that it's going to have pretty big implications in Historic as well too, because again, like I'll say this before I get to Historic. For Standard, it's very possible that this Lotus Cobra is kind of like our Growth Spiral replacement, now that that's not in the format. Or that since that won't be in the format, I mean, it was banned, but it won't be in the format when Zendikar releases anyways. But it's kind of like our Growth Spiral replacement. And it's like thinking about what that can do. If it comes out on turn 2, on turn 3, you play a land and you have 4 mana, and hey, look, you can play, I don't know, whatever you're playing at 4 mana. You could play, 4 Fairy. You could play the new Nissa. You could play you could play an Uro and then have potentially another 4 mana to do, or sorry, you'd have
another Landfall trigger.
And then you would, you have Uro. You have the 1 mana from the first Landfall trigger, then you put a land into play, and you get the Landfall trigger from that, and the land is untapped. So you have another 3 mana to do whatever you want with. You could play another Uro, you could play a Cultivate, you could do whatever. Like, the ramp is going to be out of control.
Yeah. Well, speaking of out of control and landfall, let's look at Omnath, Locus of Creation. So it's a 4 mana. It's a 4 mana Omnath. We just need finally to get a little black mana in there to be complete. And so he's a 4/4, or it's a 4/4. When Omnath, Locus of Creation, enters the battlefield, draw a card. Okay, so we have those extra. We've got that extra card draw that we've been getting a lot recently in these colors. And then landfall. This is like really interesting. This new turbo landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 4 life. If this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn. If it's the second time, add red, green, white, and blue. If it's the third time, Omnath deals 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker you don't control. So, thoughts?
There's a lot going on here. There is a lot going on here. I think that the hardest part about Omnath is casting him. I think. But the rest of it is all gravy, right? Like, drawing a card. Maybe, actually, I should say this. Maybe the hardest part is resolving him, because you could probably cast him pretty easily. Let's be honest. Right? Like, Lotus Cobra into Omnath, and then you just get to go off with, like, land for turn on the next turn. Land for turn, cultivate, get all 3 triggers. Like, that's insane. That's insane.
Or if you're using even like Grow from the Ashes in Historic too, kicked.
Oh yeah, there's tons of ways that this is just getting out of hand.
The green hour of whatever, grab 2 more lands there as well.
Hour promise,
yeah. But it's just really interesting that the template of it, like, okay, here's your first land trigger, you get this stuff. Then your second land trigger, if you can do it the same turn, and it says this turn, so it's landfall, isn't it? Doesn't it also count landfall on your opponent's turn if they worded it that way? This time, this turn.
Yep, correct. Yeah, so I'll say that the templating, very unique. I don't think it's ever been done before quite like this, where there's, like, the steps of the number of times that this ability resolves. Like, that hasn't really been done before. But you are correct. Yeah, if say, for example, if you're able to get 3 lands into play on your opponent's turn, or 1 or 2 lands into play, like, those landfall abilities will trigger.
Yeah.
I believe. Hold on. I'm pretty sure it's just when a land enters the battlefield under your control. I don't think that there's any.
No, it is. Yeah, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, so it's not just.
Yeah, there's no stipulation.
So, which one are you going to get? The full art one or the regular art one?
I really love the full art one.
Yeah.
I really, really love the full art one. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, the colors on the character look cool, but look at that border as well. That's something new to marvel at. Yeah,
the like their showcase border. Yeah. They've been doing really, really good with the showcase art. Like, they've nailed it every single time that they've done it. And yeah, this is just another great piece of art in the portfolio of the designers of these borders.
Yeah.
Because they did a really, really nice job. I think it looks really, really cool. Like, you can see, like, kind of there's like the hedron sort of shape to the picture because it extends into the card text. Like, I think that looks really, really nice.
Yeah, I can't wait to see this in real life. And they've also started to do new treatments in foils. Yeah, new like spot varnish and whatever. And can't wait to see those. We've been seeing a few videos here and there, but obviously it's not as good as looking at it in real life.
Yeah.
Well, those are the mechanics of Zendikar Rising. General thoughts on any of those that we talked about, or any other card that stands out before we talk about a couple of other things?
Nothing. I mean, there are spoilers coming out every single day, so there's a lot to kind of keep up with at this point in time.
Yeah.
If you looked on their on like where to find Zendikar Rising spoilers page, like, each day has between 10 and 15 people on it, right? So, like, there's a lot coming out that, and it's not to say that each person only gets 1 card. Some people get like 4 cards. Like, example, Day 9 got a whole party to reveal on or yesterday, right? So, like, there's a lot to unpack here. But generally, I'm very, very excited for the set. Zendikar has a very nostalgic feel for me. It's one of the, where I started playing Magic, and it has a very special place in my heart. So I love it every single time that it comes around, and having it be, since I came in at the tail end of the original Zendikar, I never really kind of knew Zendikar without Eldrazi, because the first two, Zendikar and Worldwake, didn't have the Titans. It was in Rise of the Eldrazi where the big Eldrazi Titans came in. So I never really knew Zendikar without Eldrazi. So I'm very excited to go back to it without the the looming danger of the Eldrazi coming in.
The original concept of it was simply adventure world, and then it eventually came into the Eldrazi aspect of things. So yeah, I never played either of the two Eldrazi I never played either of the two Zendikar blocks. So I'm kind of seeing it here, but I know of course that all of these Eldrazi are out there. So we're kind of experiencing it in terms of new and nostalgia. And I think that happens to everyone in terms of whenever they start playing Magic, that's the nostalgia set, no matter how it was. Because when I first played back in the 90s, Fallen Empires was one of those early sets. And nowadays that's commonly regarded as one of the worst sets ever. But when I look at that old those old art and some of those creatures, they're like, yeah, that was Magic back in my day. And then when I left Magic for a long time and came back in 2017, well, the first set that released when I came back, the first full block was Ixalan block, and I kind of have a little nostalgia for Ixalan, even though it wasn't that long ago. But I remember the Carnage Tyrant and Polyraptor and the Immortal Sun. So everyone gets nostalgia whenever they play.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, speaking of nostalgia, Fetchlands are back as Expeditions.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they're bringing. I'm happy they're bringing him back. That they're putting him in this way. I can't say that I don't necessarily agree with how they've changed how expeditions work, because before in the original Zendikar, and they didn't do expeditions in Ixalan blocks. This was, but the way they did expeditions, or like the Masterpiece series, in the Battle for Zendikar block, Kaladesh, and Amonkhet blocks. And the way that they did them was that they were just cards that could show up in a regular pack. They were only foil. They were special art. They could have been anything, but they showed up in a regular booster pack. Now with the introduction of box toppers, collector's boosters, set boosters, they've changed up how this works. And so now you guaranteed get one of these Masterpiece Expedition arts cards in when you buy a box. No guarantees it's a fetch land. It could be, it could be Bountiful Promenade for all you know, but it could be a fetch land. So you get one there. You get one if you buy a set booster box, and then you get two if you buy a collector's booster, and then you can get the foil versions in the collector's boosters. That's it. There's no other real ways to get a hold of these, which kind of stinks because it's, I guess actually I should say it stinks for a little while. There's another set that they're releasing next year that's going to have more fetch lands in it, which is very exciting, and I think that's going to help bring the prices down dramatically on the enemy fetch lands. But for what it's worth, I love the art and the border that they did for all of these.
Yeah, I totally agree on all points there. I wish they were a little bit more accessible. Yeah, you're going to get something if you buy a box, but it's out of a possible 30, and so there are other possible special lands that you get there. But on the positive note, yes, the art of these are amazing. Like I'm looking at Bloodstained Mire, and I love that, like the red tones, the purple tones. That's amazing. Plus these borders with the little hedrons and the little splashes of the color moving throughout the border. And again, in real life and in foil, in the new treatment and such, I'm sure these are amazing.
Oh yeah, I bet these are going to be great. And for what it's worth, a lot of these cards, a lot of the lands in here are generally pretty good. Generally, like as an example, I think the only like quote unquote duds in this are the battle bond lands, and they're not even that big of duds. Like those are I think like between $7 and $12 or probably something like that. Luxury Suite, Sea of Clouds, Bountiful Promenade, Spire Garden, and Morphic Pool. Those are the original Battle Bond lands, but the rest of them are really, really good. You know, Valakut, you get all the fetch lands for one.
Speaking of Valakut.
Oh yeah, they put Valakut in here, which is I think was really cool, and I love the art on it too. But like all the fetch lands in there, you get the original fast lands from Scars of Mirrodin, which are like the Seacombe Coast and Copperline Gorge, Razor Verge Thicket. I forget the other two, the blue-black one and the black-red one. But you get those 5, which are generally pretty expensive. I think they're like at least $20, if not more. You get all the fetch lands. You get Colonnade, Celestial Colonnade, and Creeping Tar Pit, Grove of the Burn Willows, Horizon Canopy, Strip Mine Wasteland, Ancient Tomb, Cavern of Souls, Prismatic Vista. Like there isn't a bad hit really in any of those 30, but you really, really want the fetch land.
Yeah. There's a little bit of everything for everyone here. If you're a little bit more in the high power range of things, and Strip Mine, that's definitely a classic one. Back when I was playing in the 90s, so I have 4th edition Strip Mine, or 3 or 4, I guess. But here's a brand new art on that, and I just noticed there's like a little core guy, I guess, running out of the ruined earth of the Strip Mine. I didn't notice that until I looked at it carefully. Prismatic Vista is being reprinted for the first time, and it was just invented recently in Modern Horizon 1. So it's like the fetch land for a basic land. So that's kind of like the full cycle there. But yeah, 30 cards in these box toppers to drive down the prices of things. The Cavern of Souls was getting pretty expensive, and now we've got a reprint for it. It's a little hard to get still as a box topper, but we've got at least a pool of 30 cards in here to possibly crack open.
Yeah, and what's nice is that with these being accessible in the collector's boosters, the foil prices are going to go hopefully down a little bit too. If anything, hopefully the prices on the normal versions of these cards go down, because just generally the other ones are a little bit more accessible. But ours are not accessible, a little bit more desired, I should say. So hopefully it's just like the ones that are, your standard ones you got out of the fetch ones you got out of Modern Masters or Concept Hard Cure, hopefully those go down a bit.
Yeah. That's a lot to look forward to. As of the recording of this podcast, there are still many more spoilers coming out in the coming weeks, and we can look forward to the week of September 21st, when we start to be able to play it on Arena, on Modo, and then it launches on the 25th. So how many boxes have you pre-ordered already?
I have pre-ordered 0 boxes. Only because I'm saving it for Arena.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's definitely been your go-to way to play more nowadays. Obviously, even if we were outside of the COVID times, you'd still want to focus more on Arena?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right, cool. Well, final thoughts on anything Zendikar Rising?
I'm super excited for it.
So yeah, Magic. It's coming to a Magic Arena soon. Probably around the 17th or 18th or something. We get a little bit of time to play it before it releases on paper, which is the 25th. So we'll see what's in store with this new set. Okay, so as we get towards the end of the podcast, let's look at the future. Let's look at the far-flung future of the year 2021. The reveal stream told us all about the new sets that are coming out. Not every single detail, of course, but we've got a bunch of new sets coming out in the future. We've got their names at least, so let's just kind of talk about them a little bit. We've got Kaldheim. I don't quite know anything about it. I know people have been talking about it here and there, that they've talked about that it's been in like flavor text or whatever, and that it was in Plane Chase and such. Any thoughts on Kaldheim?
Yeah, so it's a Viking theme set, which I guess we don't have very much to go off of on that, but it sounds cool. I'm very excited for it. I think it's another one of those one of these occasions where they're going to be able to build out a really cool world and have a lot of really cool flavorful cards, kind of like what they did with Eldraine.
I sort of vaguely myself think about it as like the Ice Age world of things, even though Ice Age was in Dominaria. But so it's like Vikings and snowy stuff, and just
Yeah, I'm gonna guess so. It's either Vikings and snowy or Vikings and sea, like the
oh,
ocean,
okay.
maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I would wager that maybe vehicles make a comeback
Oh,
in there.
sure, yeah.
I could guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the kind of cool things that if they reveal just simply the name this early on, we can start to speculate and then maybe put out our wants and desires about it. But on the other hand, we know so very little except just the name of it that who knows what it'll be.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting that it's coming out in Q1 of 2020 or 2021, which generally means it's probably around like February,
Yeah.
March-ish, maybe a little earlier, but like that's exciting. It's not that far away if you think about it. So yeah, but it's
Yeah.
very, very cool. Very excited to see what it actually looks like.
All right, so after Kaldheim in quarter two, we're going to get Harry Potter World in the World of Magic, also known as Strixhaven, School of Mages.
Yeah, I have no idea what to think about this one. I have absolutely no clue. I think it'll be really cool. If kind of how they described it, like there was like 5 colleges of magic
Mm-hmm.
that are all vying for power, I guess, or something. But like I think that I think there is room for something really cool to happen here, but I just have no clue what it's going to be.
Yeah, this is like last year or so when we got the reveal about here's the future of magic in the year 2020. We're going to have Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths, and we're like, what is that even going to be? So
Yeah,
Strixhaven, I kind of like love the name of it. That it's kind of evocative. Like I don't know what it's evoking, but I like that it's evocative. Strixhaven, and then it's got a bird as the little icon, I guess. So that kind of reminds me of Baleful Strix. And School of Mages. So, like I said, it's Harry Potter world, and we'll see how it goes. But I think it's really interesting that they tease it out and give us plenty of time to speculate.
oh yeah.
After that, then we're gonna get. I think the slide also says set names not final, but they have it listed here as Dungeons and Dragons Adventures into the Forgotten Realms. So I wonder if that's going to fit actually on the booster pack. But we're going to get Dungeons and Dragons World in an official black border version of a magic set. So it's canon now that there is a plane of the multiverse that is the Dungeons and Dragons world.
Yeah, this is actually, I think this is the one I'm most excited for as an avid D&D player. There's a lot of cool stuff in that world, and that I'm even still, finding and exploring. So, yeah, I bet that they're going to be going to absolute to town on a lot of callbacks and references and to locations and enemies and stuff like that in the set. And the one thing that they did mention here that they in this article that they did not mention in the preview. Is that it's actually coming out in place of the core set. So there's going to be no core set next year. It will be this instead, which is interesting.
Yeah, after I kind of scrutinized things, when I kind of looked at things a second time, I noticed, hey, wait a minute, there's no core set this time. So I'm fine with that. It'll be interesting that they maybe do a core set every other year, and they're changing things up. And this coming year, we're gonna have a new set every single year instead of the core set, which is cool. It's a mishmash of things, but here we have like a focused set every quarter.
I'm definitely not sad that we're losing. I generally like core sets a lot. They have a lot of cool cards in them, but I'm not sad that we're giving up a core set for this.
Yeah. Now, what I'm really interested about and confused is they mentioned that there's going to be 2 Return to Innistrad sets in quarter 4 of 2021. There's no names just yet. They just have the placeholder Innistrad Werewolves and Innistrad Vampires, and it seems like they said that these were going to be each a complete set, so 270 cards or whatever. So, what do you think about that? 2 Innistrad sets at the end of the year.
I think that it's something that this is a play to the fans of people who've been asking for this for so long. Personally, like I loved the original Innistrad set. I wasn't as big a fan of Shadows, so we'll see how this one plays out. But I think this is again another instance where there's a ton of room for them to draw on the lore and myths of werewolves and vampires and really kind of bake this world full of flavor, and just really go to town and focus in on this because Innistrad is kind of like your like your eldritch horror kind of style type theme, and it has so much going on in Innistrad that it's very hard to focus in on a couple of different things. And vampires, and more even so, arguably werewolves, have been kind of pushed to the bottom of the supported archetypes for quite some time. So it's cool to see them kind of really be able to dive into the lore deep. Hopefully, be able to pull out some really, really sweet cards and art and story to go along with it. So yeah, that's going to be exciting.
It's interesting to look back on the history of Magic sets, especially when they returned, because they it seems like they didn't they were kind of striking out a little bit in terms of, okay, we had original Innistrad and everyone loved it. We had, Return to Innistrad, Shadows over Innistrad, which wasn't as beloved as the original, and that also happened with Zendikar. We had original Zendikar, people loved it. We had Battle for Zendikar, and it didn't quite resonate as much. And here we're doing like a third time's the charm with Innistrad, and I think they'll probably be able to pull it off, because learning from the past mistakes especially is a big thing I think that Magic is good at.
Yeah, and I think that also too, like, hopefully there won't be any crazy out of left field things happening here. Like with Shadow's block, there was Emrakul randomly showed up on the plane. So hopefully there's nothing crazy out of left field, but yeah, I mean, like, I think that people have been wanting something focused in on the werewolves for so long and vampires for so long. They're two of the most loved fan favorite archetypes and creature types of all time. So it's one of those things where, I don't think that assuming they have to completely just botch the entire design for it to not be a success, right? Like they have so much get going for them that it can be a home run. As long as they just, even do like a halfway decent job, it'll still be good.
Yeah, if they focus on the core tenets of it, if they focus on what we see here, that it's going to be werewolves and vampires, not like a demonic werewolf made out of Emrakul tentacles.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So, mini rant from myself here. I'm more of a fan of the multi-block paradigm. So way back in the 90s, we had the very first block set officially, which was Mirage. There was Mirage, Visions, and Weatherlight. I like the 3-block structure, even though I know that there are problems and fatigue with spending so much time in one plane, but I like the lore aspect of things. I like that there's the breathing room to kind of figure things out more. Sometimes the blocks, each particular set maybe isn't as cohesive, maybe in draft, but I like the staying 3 in a plane. I was fine with when they went down to 2. So again, Ixalan block or Kaladesh block, where it was 2 of a set, and you get to breathe. I'm not a big fan that they just do the one and done and then move on, and there's 4 of them every year, and there's just not enough time to kind of stay and enjoy things. Even though it was kind of funny that they had Guilds of Ravnica, Ravnica Allegiance, and War of the Spark, which all felt like it was a return to Ravnica. Here, from the next year coming up, it looks like we're going to do that again in terms of one and done until we get to Ravnica, and they're going to cram it all in quarter 4, which is kind of weird. You're going to have 2 big sets in a short amount of time, quarter 4. Thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I loved at least having 2. I loved having 3. There was a lot of really cool things, and like you could build up kind of like what they did with original Zendikar, what they did with the original Innistrad block. You kind of build this foundation of the first and the second set, and then the third set kind of just turns everything on its head, but it's still tied in. Like, there's a lot of cool things you could be doing with 3 sets, and even with like 2 sets. There's a lot of progression that, players are smart. Like the people who are, lore nerds and who love all the lore and stuff, and who, really dive into the cards and that perspective as it pertains to the story. There is so much progression on these cards that could be done if there was a second set. Yeah. Like if we had a second Eldraine set, right? If we had a second Ikoria set, there's so much that we could do, or that I should say that Wizards could do, as far as telling more story, progressing more cards, that they just miss out on these opportunities to do so. And I'm surprised that for something as big as Dungeons and Dragons, unless they're literal, like unless Dungeons and Dragons, the Dungeons and Dragons set isn't really like meant to tell a story per se, and it's meant to kind of be a cute collaboration set. You know, there's endless amounts of story that could be done with the Dungeons and Dragons stuff. Like that universe is huge. There's so much that I find it hard that they're going to be able to cram everything into one set. You know, I would have loved to at least seen a second set for the Dungeons and Dragons stuff.
I'm sure their reply to that is, well, we'll return, but unfortunately it takes years to return. Wasn't it years between the end of Rise of the Eldrazi until we got Battle for Zendikar? Literally years?
It was probably around 7 years, maybe 6 years.
Yeah. So,
maybe it was 5 years. I think it was actually 5 years. It might have been. Either way, it was a while. It was years. Yeah.
Even if it was 1 year, people just have so much attention to give, and to wait 1 year, 2 years, and whatever X years it was back then. And even when we went from Innistrad back to Shadows, but that was tying a little bit more with the Eldrazi, and time. I know that they're working pretty far in advance most of the time. They already probably have, sets figured out for the year 2025. But for us in the real world, I kind of feels like it's either things are too fast or things are too slow. But I guess that's our lot as Magic players. We're never happy.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Well, there's a couple ancillary items that are also coming out in 2021. We've got Time Spiral Remastered. So we recently had Amonkhet Remastered on Arena, and back in the day we had Tempest Remastered on Magic Online, and here we're going to get the best of all three. Speaking of three in a block, we're going to get the best of all three of the original Time Spiral block into one set. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's cool. I'm excited about it. I think that them putting in kind of like the old school frames for some of the cards is very cool as well. It's also going to do a number on some of the cards that are a little bit more expensive out of that set to bring the prices down on them maybe a little bit. So that's exciting. I'm very, very excited to see that. I didn't get to play the original Time Spiral block at all. It's way before my time. So this will be cool if I hopefully I'll be able to get a chance to draft it.
What's interesting I wasn't playing at that time either, but from what I've read, some of the cards within that block are, Mark Rosewater admits, some of the greatest mistakes in the world of Magic, because, for example, making, a white counter spell, or making, yeah, exactly. So it's like people always tell him, well, why can't this color have that? You did it before. And he said, yeah, we did it in a kind of a fake future set. So that was the greatest mistake, because there's a real card that exists that fuels people to ask for what a certain color doesn't do. So I wonder how many of those cards that were mistakes will come back in this set.
Yeah, I mean, let's if the Amonkhet Remastered, if that was anything to go off of, while yes, they're grabbing from 3 sets for this versus 2 for Amonkhet, they're gonna get a lot of the fan favorites. I'm gonna wager, because you can only fit so many cards in the set, and you have a whole bunch of different. You have 3 sets to choose from. They're gonna pick the fan favorites, because when Amonkhet Remastered was starting to be previewed, and when the white cards were previewed and we didn't see Regal Caracal on that list, the Magic Twitter went up in flames. They're like, why is this not on this? Why is it not on the list? And then we can't come to find out that it was actually the buy a box card, or the buy the bigger bundle card, right? So it was there. They know that there are cards that they need to put in there, and if any of the mistakes, I'm not sure exactly which of those cards he's referring to, aside out of Mana Tithe. If any of those are actual fan favorites, they're hopefully going to be in there. Considering as well too that it is a self-contained set, it's meant to be drafted, right? So it's probably not. They'll probably make it in.
Yeah, and it's also going to feed into other formats most likely. But yeah, I'm still stinging that we didn't get Anointed Pouncer in Amonkhet Remastered. I love that. I love that double striking zombie cat.
Yeah, that felt like a big miss.
And the other non-arena set that's coming out is Modern Horizons 2. So I enjoyed the original Modern Horizons. I like that it was a kind of a mishmash of vintage stuff plus new takes on vintage stuff, and I guess we're going to get more of the same on that. And that's where we're going to get the Fetchlands in booster packs. Slightly more expensive, but we're going to get them in booster packs in Modern Horizons 2.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Modern Horizons 1 was a really, really fun, really, really great draft experience. And it had a really big impact on Modern. There was a lot of cards in there. Hogak that was banned almost in very, very quickly. Urza, Arkham's Astrolabe that was just recently banned. Like there's a ton out of that set that was really, really impactful on Modern. So having Fetchlands be reprinted, going to hopefully drive people to play more Modern, which is exciting. I think those formats are fun, and they should be accessible to the vast majority of people, right? They shouldn't be, $1,500 decks for like a singular deck, $1,500. No, not. I don't think that should be the case. But yeah, very exciting. I can't wait to see what new stuff they're going to pull into it, because they did put some really cool stuff in Modern Horizons 1. Should be a hit for Modern Horizons 2, I'm sure.
Yeah, so lots of stuff to look forward to in the year 2021. Are we forgetting anything?
I guess if you care about Secret Lairs, Yargle Secret Lair tomorrow. Or not tomorrow. If you're listening to this, I guess you would have missed it. So you would have had to order the Yargle Secret Lair. It was on September 3rd. Yeah. And then the Secret Lair Walking Dead, I guess, is coming soon, which is kind of cool. All zombie themed stuff.
Yeah, so I wonder if we're going to get an official like Rick Grimes card or Michonne card, and what their stats will be. I know Michonne is going to be like the alternate version of Massacre Girl.
Oh yeah, there you go. Actually, that'd be pretty sick.
Yes. I wonder if it's going to be like that with Godzilla cards, that it's just alternate names of things that do actually exist, or will they be? Well, the reveal that they've done so far is literally a card called a token. Is it a token or a card? It's called Walker. It's a 2/2 token creature zombie, so it's
yeah, I think it's just your standard zombie token, but they just name it Walker. I think it's still going to be super, super cool. I expect that. Yeah, you're right that there's going to be like the Godzilla art. It's going to be just a reference back to an existing card, but it'll be something from the show or the comic. Yeah, that should be cool.
Oh, well, kudos to you for mentioning the comic. Not a lot of people remember the Walking Dead comic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, happy Yargle Day, I guess, September 3rd. So that's cool. I didn't know that was something we were celebrating nowadays, but yep.
I didn't either.
There's a secret layer to promote that. The art is kind of funny and cool. And
I love it. The art is sweet.
And then we've got the opt with, instead of Teferi, we've got Yargle opting, and Fatal Push. It's the Yargle fatally pushing a guy.
I love it. It's so good.
Yeah, these are fun. There's been just a lot of great. I think Secret Lair. There was the chatter about it a while ago, where it's like there's too much Secret Lair, but it's not. Not every layer is for you, and not everyone cares about what every layer is, and just get what you like, and then just enjoy what you get. And it's a cool little collectible, and if you want to put it in decks, even better. But there's something that people are going to like. Like, some people are into The Walking Dead, and some people moved on, and some people are going to come back to it, and they're going to have a magic card that represents something from that franchise as well.
Oh, interesting. Real quick, Bennett, before we jump off to this, or before we move on, there was a card, a new Zendikar card that was just released by Channel Fireball on Twitter, or maybe it was like by Grim. Mind Carver is a new equipment. 1 black for an equipment. His equip cost of 2 and a black. When it enters the battlefield, attach it to a creature you control. So kind of like the Evercleave thing. The equipped creature gets +1/+0. It gets +3/+1 instead, as long as your opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. Interesting. I don't know what to think about that.
Breaking news. Literally 13 minutes ago, according to the timestamp. So, amazing art. And yeah, we're definitely getting more equipment coming into the new set. So that wouldn't be Threshold, right? Threshold is something about 7, but in your own...
Yeah, it's 7 cards in your graveyard.
So it's anti-Threshold.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. It's got a little bit of everything in terms of it can be simply a +1 or a +3/+1, and then equip cost is 3 on that, and an auto attach. So they might be creating more of these auto equip, auto attach equipments coming out. This is also continuing the train of thought of a colored artifact instead of a colorless artifact. Thoughts on that? Thoughts on the focus on more colorized artifacts?
All about it. I think it's cool.
Because they kind of synergize better in a deck, or they don't, or they're not as overpowered.
I think just because they're less ambiguous, I guess. Yeah, they can just go in specific decks, right? They're not slot into every deck that would run equipment. Like you have to be dedicated to the color for it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we got some breaking news at the end of the podcast, which by the time people hear it, they've already heard about it. But if they didn't hear about it, we just revealed here Mind Carver on the podcast. All right, well, we talked a bunch of Magic and what's coming very soon and what's coming much more in the future. So, final thoughts on, you mentioned a little bit of the sort of the lore of things. We're getting lore back. We're getting stories back on the website. I, for one, like that. I like all aspects of Magic, the play aspect of it, the brew aspect, the competitive nature, the casual nature, the art, the lore of it. And I know that I missed not having something to read about the recent sets. And so I'm glad that lore is back. What about yourself?
I definitely enjoyed some of the stories back in the day. I am also kind of a lore junkie as well myself for things in World of Warcraft and StarCraft and Magic as well too. So that's very exciting to see that those are coming back.
Yeah, as of this podcast, there's already some episodes up on the mothership, so they announced it and then they published them right away. So that's what I like to see, and that's some good bedtime reading to get into the hype mode, because we've got a lot of Zendikar cards coming out, and to see some lore that attaches to them, as well as the flavor text and other things that we'll see. I think that really rounds out the world. If we can't stay on a plane for more than one set, I really think the lore is an important aspect.
Yep, most definitely.
Well, Dragosi, as we wind down at the very end, what would you like to promote again, or reveal, or anything of the like?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier in the podcast in the beginning that I had some special promotional things that I wanted to talk about. So the last time I was on the podcast, I had joined a Magic team with Rebel Esports. Unfortunately, since then, the team has disbanded. But a lot of the original members of that team have stuck together, and we have created a Magic content community website called the 10th Street Journal. And so I am one of the co-founders, as well as a writer, video producer, and content manager of the site. We have Twitter, Instagram, the website itself, YouTube, and we do multiple articles, Magic articles a week, mostly focused on Arena right now. Standard, historic, talking about Commander as well, maybe Brawl here and there. But we do have between 4 to 6 articles a week, and then we have about 4 videos go up on our YouTube every week, including a podcast, which we do on Sundays. And then so that's one of the promotional things. If in addition to my Twitter and Twitch and whatnot as well, you can find my articles over on 10thstreetjournal.com. And so that I write, like I said, I write a historic article every week. And I also am responsible for doing kind of the emergency need an article to go up, for example, ban and restricted announcement analysis, doing preview videos for the YouTube channel as well. So I'm pretty heavily involved in that content, so you can check some of that stuff out. In addition, really cool thing as well, we are doing tournaments as well too. We're going to be starting our tournaments on the 19th of September, so in a couple of weeks here. On Magic Arena, we'll be doing 2 tournaments a month with prize support for at least one of them. And the formats will change. We will be asking on our Twitter about like what kind of formats people want to play for the coming weeks. So just to get some feedback from the community, but we're a community of people who love Magic, who want to help each other grow and become either better Magic players, content producers, what have you. So we would love to have everybody come and join us as well in the in our Discord, as well again to check out the website and the YouTube for some of the content we put out there.
Well, thanks so much for that. I'm definitely going to put all of the links. Give me whatever links you want. I'll put them in the show notes, get you more traffic and more visibility and such. You really sound like you're turning into quite an empire there with the Discord, with the podcast, with the videos, with the website. And I was taking a look at the site, and yeah, I saw a lot of great articles that I want to jump into. It seems like you even said earlier, that historic is starting to be like much more of your bread and butter on Arena.
Yeah, for me personally, that's like the format. That's the format I love the most. You get to play with the most, cool cards in there. At least I think so, anyway. So, yeah, that's kind of been my bread and butter for ladder, and it's also been my bread and butter for content for the most part too. So, yeah, I've been getting really deep into that stuff. But yeah, we're trying to build up. Like I said, we're trying to just build up, just a safe space where people can come in and hang out and talk about Magic and play Magic with each other, and just generally have a good place to call, have some friends around and whatnot, right, to socialize. And especially in these times where we can't necessarily go out to our local game stores, having a really cool, safe, friendly environment for people to come and hang out and play Magic and grow as far as competitiveness or just have some fun. That's what we're about. So
that perfectly ties into the core tenets of Magic itself, in that it's this great game, it's a fun game, it's the Gathering, Magic the Gathering. So I'm glad you're continuing that in your own endeavors during these times, and I appreciate that it's like you're saying, safe space, inclusive, and so forth. So very cool. I'll put all of those links in the notes, and I think I noticed that you also put in a little bit of like for the lore people, even the name of your organization.
Yeah, so the other founder of the 10th Street Journal, his name is Shinogi. He's on Twitter, but he was the guy who originally recruited me into the Magic team to begin with, and so between him and I, he's a mono red player. He plays goblins. He plays red aggro. He's all about that stuff. So he kind of put together when he put together the 10th Street Journal, maybe about a month and a half ago or so. That's what we kind of stuck with as a working title. We were initially thinking of it was going to be our working temporary team name until we ended up finding a competitive team to join, and then it turned into we're just going to make it the 10th Street Journal. We're going to do this thing our own way because we were just having some trouble finding organizations that wanted to, pick up some Magic players. And so we just, said, you know what, let's just do it our own way. Let's just do our own thing. And now it's growing, and it's, we're getting, we're partnered with a local game store in my area who's helping us with prize support for our tournaments. We're getting sponsorships with different companies and stuff. And so, yeah, it's very exciting. It's all growing. A lot of stuff happening very, very quickly, but it's very, very cool to have a lot of, great people in the community. There might be some faces you'll recognize from Magic Twitter. If you float around Magic Twitter at all, there might be some people you recognize in there who are staff writers for us and content producers. So yeah, definitely come hang out. We would love to have all of you. So for the Patreon, the current iteration of tiers that we have, I had to be careful when picking the names for them because I don't want to, like 10th Street itself is something that doesn't necessarily, I don't think has a copyright in anywhere in Magic, but yeah. I want to be careful about the names of cards. So if we can get away with that, we'll definitely be changing the names of the 10th Street or of the Patreon tiers. But currently the Patreon tiers are 10th Street Recruit, 10th Street Tavern Regulars. Oh, our Discord is called the 10th Street Tavern. 10th Street Tavern Regulars, the Tavern Storyteller tier, the Tavern Adventurer tier, the Tavern Bard tier, and the Tavern VIP tier. And we have, so there's 6 different tiers, each getting, varying benefits. The top 2 tiers are ones where, like, say, like the 10th Street, the Bard or the Tavern tier, or the Tavern Bard tier would get to be on one of our podcasts for, if they wanted to, if there's something they wanted to talk about, or we were planning on doing an online commander series, they could be on one of those videos. And then the VIP tier, they get to be in, either the commander one for a whole season of that, and then it also get to be on the podcast for like a month. So like those are the very, very top end, if those are people who like really want to be involved. But Patreon is one of those things that also just helps us keep the lights on. We're all doing this right now as kind of a passion project, and so if that's something I can give you links for as well too. But if anybody's interested in joining our Patreon as well too, like I said, we have those, not required, but if you love what we're doing, we appreciate that too.
I think I do see that a lot of Magic fans out there do love supporting their content creators, so I'm sure you're gonna just build more and keep the lights on and even progress beyond that. So yeah, definitely give me all of those links. I'll put them into the description, and thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody has any suggestions on things that they would love to see from us, the Discord is always open. The 10th Street Twitter, which is 10th Street News, is open. The DMs are open there. Feel free to reach out to us. We this is a community, and so if you guys have any cool things you'd love to see from us as well too, we'd love to hear it.
Cool. Well, thank you on that. Thank you for your time as well in the podcast, and final thoughts on anything at all?
No, I think that was, I always love being on your podcast. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to, promote 10th Street as well too. It's something that, I've been putting a ton of time into. Honestly, that's the reason I've been taking a break from playing Magic, is I've been just doing that. So
yeah, setting your foundation and everything, putting everything up.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, just getting everything in order. Just so yeah, I appreciate like I said, you having me on and letting me promote that.
No problem. That's one of the big goals of this podcast, is just to talk with a variety of Magic people in however they like to play, and with a focus on Arena, online and such, but with everyone's experiences, and that's why I do this. So thanks everyone for listening to the podcast. I'll see you next time. This has been VM Campos, and I'll see you in the arena.